Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am your host, Chris Daughtry. Before we get into the show today, I want to give you guys an update on our September subscriber battle. Michigan lost against Texas this weekend, and we want to beat them all September long, so make sure you guys are subscribed right now. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking about a few different topics. We're going to discuss some injury news that Kalen DeBoer during his press conference today kind of went over. Also, going to be talking about the offensive line. Wilkin Formby, Elijah Pritchett. Got to get Kadyn Proctor out there as well because, look, right now the offensive line does not look very good. Also, want to talk about Jalen Milroe and how he looked this weekend. And, hopefully, that progression that we all hope is coming from him will continue as, the season goes on. Also, want to talk about a 5-star recruit in this 2025 class that is very high on the Crimson Tide. All right, the first injury update that we want to go into on the show today is on Cole Adams. Coach Kalen DeBoer talked about he does have a upper extremity injury. And, he pointed to his elbow, then he pointed to his shoulder, possibly bicep. I don't know. I'm just assuming there. But for right now, I would not expect Cole Adams to really be out there this weekend against Wisconsin. I hope I'm wrong there, but just from what it sounded like, it does not sound like Cole Adams is going to be out there. Kalen DeBoer specifically said, quote, "I wouldn't rule him out, but I think he'll probably be very limited early this week." So it doesn't really sound very positive on Cole Adams, but you had Jalen Mbakwe back there returning punts for you. You got a plethora of playmakers at the wide receiver position, so it's not that big of a deal right now for Alabama. The next guy I want to talk about on the injury report is Elijah Pritchett. Still day-to-day, I read 247 put out there that he was dealing with a hamstring injury, but nobody else has really put the hamstring part out there, so we'll just consider him right now still day-to-day. Kalen DeBoer said last week he practiced on Wednesday but was very limited, but then he also practiced on Thursday. That's why you saw he only played 6 snaps this past weekend. They really wanted to make sure they could really get through the game without him getting injured. I think he is definitely going to be out there this weekend. Kadyn Proctor, the biggest injury news I think that we've been discussing, missed the opening game of the year against Western Kentucky with that shoulder injury that he injured during pregame warmups. Also missed this past weekend. Alabama had to shuffle their offensive line a lot, to accommodate for that. And still, it was not very good. Still, I'm putting in there the day-to-day part, but, I would assume right now it is still probably considered day-to-day for him. But hopefully, I would assume that, he's got a pretty solid chance to play against Wisconsin this weekend. Just me throwing a number out there, I'd put it probably around 70-ish%. So let me know in the comment section, do you guys think Kadyn Proctor will play against Wisconsin this weekend? Type Y for yes or type N for no at the pinned comment of today's video. Look, we need to talk about the fact how bad Alabama's offensive line looked this past weekend. 10 penalties in total out of the 13 this weekend were just from your offensive line. You had 2 on Tyler Booker, and then you had 4 on Geno Vandermark, and you also had 4 very, very costly penalties against Wilkin Formby. You had the 174-yard touchdown run from Jalen Milroe was taken off the board because of a hold. You had a 54-yard explosive play to Kobe Prentice that was taken off the board. You also had the other touchdown run from Jalen Milroe taken off the board from that Geno Vandermark holding Alabama. Thankfully, was still able to score on that drive, but it's those little things that add up that you just do not want to see. And specifically on the offensive line, I want to continue talking about this right tackle battle. Guys, I know we have talked about it extensively all off season long and the first couple weeks of the season, but I'm going to still talk about it because I've seen on social media and in the comments section, a lot of people think after Wilkin Formby's very, very bad game this past weekend. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that. It was bad. A lot of people think that Elijah Pritchett has won this right tackle battle, and I'm just not willing to go there yet. I'm not going to assume that Elijah Pritchett is better because he played 6 snaps in this game at right tackle, and Alabama scored on 3 of them. I don't think that, the correlation, causation stuff, I don't really think is, there for that take. I think, Elijah Pritchett is probably better at run blocking, but I do think Wilkin Formby is better in pass blocking. And look, it's almost like people forgot how well Wilkin Formby played in the first game of the season. Pretty solid in his run blocking grade per PFF. So, you can take it with a grain of salt if you want. It's a human element to these grades. But he did extremely well in the passing game. No sacks, no hits, no hurries, no pressures. I mean, you cannot ask for anything more. But the South Florida game was absolutely abysmal. I don't think you could have played a worse game at right tackle against South Florida. So I still think this right tackle battle is still ongoing for Alabama right now. I think you can get Kadyn Proctor back out there this weekend. You put Tyler Booker back there at left guard. You get Geno Vandermark the hell out of that starting offensive rotation. And then you figure it out at right tackle. I think the best offensive lineman for you has been probably Jaden Roberts because there has been a couple of issues with Parker Brailsford. But look, at that right tackle position, and it really on the offensive line as a whole, I think a lot of people forget the fact that, development is not a linear line. As well as Wilkin Formby played in the first game of the season, really the only place he could go was down. Now, it does not help that Wilkin Formby just jumped off the high dive into the pool and belly flopped in the second game. But look, sometimes you have a bad game. You get better, you get a little bit worse, you fix those mistakes, you get a little bit better. Sometimes you go back, you get better the next week, you get better the next week. Might have to go back a little bit. That's just kind of how it is, especially at that offensive line grouping anyways. So how worried are you guys about the offensive line right now? Scale it for me 1 to 10. 1, you're not worried at all. You think Alabama's going to be the best offensive line at the end of the season. 10, you're super worried. You don't think they could block a fly right now. Let me know in the comment section of today's video. Guys, today's show is presented by Game Time. Game Time is the only ticketing app that I use, even before they were a sponsor here at the Alabama Football Report. Game Time even has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. The Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and so much more. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to the start of the event. Game Time also has killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest prices guaranteed. If you guys find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. I don't know any ticketing app that will do that for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Check out GameTime.co for last-minute tickets. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. I also want to talk about Jalen Milroe this past weekend. Look, I don't think he did as well as I honestly would have hoped to see him. I asked for, 20-25 throws in this game, and you got that, but I don't think the efficiency was really there that you were looking for. Now, you also have to take into consideration the fact that you had a 54-yard play taken off of that stat line as well. You had that 74-yard run taken off of the stat line. I think Jalen Milroe only finished with 2 rushing yards because of that, and it's really stupid in college football. With sacks, they take that out of the rushing yards. I think that's really, really stupid. I think the worst play really from the game for Jalen Milroe was fumbling the ball on the 2-yard line. That was unacceptable. That cannot happen in games moving forward. You cannot let that happen. Looking now, though, to Jalen Milroe's passing direction from Pro Football Focus. We've talked about the fact that we want to see him grow in those intermediate routes, anywhere from 10 to 20 yards. And, 1 for 5 on there. So, you had the opportunities, 2 for 5. So you had some opportunities there, but you did not really, able to capitalize on that. Passes 10 plus yards downfield. Only 3 for 9. So also, not something that, you really want to see there. There were also, if you go back and watch the game, I do think South Florida's DBs were holding a lot, especially on Ryan Williams. You see 0 for 2 up there in the top right-hand corner. There were 2 balls thrown to Ryan Williams up there that, man, he was just getting mauled on those plays, and there was nothing called on that. So I do think there's a little bit of give and take on, what you see here, but I still want to see Jalen Milroe get better in that aspect. Anywhere from, honestly, anywhere from 10 to 20 yards. He has to get better at this season, and that is the biggest thing. Another thing, passing under pressure. Jalen Milroe did a great job when the pocket was kept clean. And when he was not blitzed, obviously that means the pocket was probably kept clean. But when he was under pressure, he was, let's just call it like it is, he was pretty bad. 7 for 19 total under pressure and when he was blitzed. And, some of the math doesn't really add up there. It's because, when you're under pressure, it's probably because you were blitzed and vice versa with the kept clean versus not blitzed. So the math doesn't necessarily add up there. That is why. But look, Jalen Milroe, we've talked about it so much. I think he can do it. I am a Jalen Milroe believer, but, man, he's going to have to show me something a little bit more, especially this week against Wisconsin, a better matchup, like a harder matchup. I need to see more from Jalen Milroe in the passing game. So grade Jalen Milroe's performance against South Florida. Type it A, B, C, D, or F. How do you guys think Jalen Milroe did? Let me know right now in the comment section of today's video. Lastly, before we get out of here, 5-star defensive lineman Justus Terry. Steve Wiltfong putting out today that Alabama is, quote, becoming more than a dark horse for Justin Terry in this recruiting race. We've talked about Justin Terry pretty extensively on this show. He was committed to Georgia, decommits from Georgia, commits to USC, decommits from USC, and all the, writers out there assume that he was just going to, commit back to Georgia because he is from Georgia, so it kind of makes, a little bit of sense. But Chad Simmons of On3 also put out there today that Justin Terry really loves Freddie Roach, and he is one of the main reasons why Justus Terry, is still keeping Alabama, as one of his top teams in his recruitment. And I think, from what Freddie Roach has been able to do at Alabama, he's been able to put a bunch of defensive linemen into the National Football League. You look at this year as well, what he's doing with Tim Keenan. I think Jaheim Otis is just warming up. I think he looks a whole lot better than he did last year. But it is really intriguing for a guy like Justus Terry. Look, he's a 5-star athlete. He's one of the best players in the country, number 8 overall. He's the number 2 defensive lineman in this class and the number 2 player from Manchester, Georgia. Look, you're not ranked number 8 overall, for no reason. This guy is super, super explosive along the defensive line. And, man, if you just Google some pictures of Justin Terry, there's one out there where he's shirtless, flexing, and this dude is just an absolute beast. He is huge. Really reminds me a lot of Steve Mbamua, the way his body type is a little bit. So, if Alabama can get this guy, in this recruiting class, that would be really, really huge alongside London Simmons as well. Because, look, the leaders for Justus Terry right now, really, I think the top 2 leaders right now, Georgia and Alabama, but On3 also throwing Auburn in the mix as well. Justus Terry was on campus this past weekend during that South Florida game. He will also be at that Georgia game in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So he's got a couple opportunities to see Alabama in action this year. Let's hope the Crimson Tide can close on him.